I know a lot of people, a lot of top performers are making, multiple six figures, but yet they still have this financial anxiety. So what's maybe the root cause of that anxiety, and why does it even persist amongst high net worth individuals that really shouldn't be living a life of financial anxiety in the first place?
I think a lot of it goes back to young experiences. We got cars repossessed. We lost a house that I loved and had to move into a rented house. And there were a lot of things with mismanagement of money that defined how I saw myself and how I wanted others to perceive me because of those experiences.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
All right. Welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest. I've got Leisa Peterson. Leisa, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Jeremy.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to chopping it up with you. So Leisa is a money mindset coach, an author, a financial educator, and helps people transform their relationship with money. She has over 25 years of experience in financial services, and she founded WealthClinic to help people overcome financial anxiety and build wealth from a holistic perspective. Leisa, you're just the right person to have on the show. So I really appreciate your time in joining us today. Would love for you to let our listening audience know maybe a little bit more about your background, your journey, what you're focused on today, et cetera.
So I think it's great because you focus on real estate that I talk a little bit about my background with real estate. My husband, we met in college and he actually dropped out because he wanted to work with his hands and he wanted to work outside and ultimately became a contractor. And so we have been developing real estate for over 30 years. It's the thing that allowed us to build financial freedom early in life. And I'm a huge fan of it. So I'm a huge fan of what you do and what people come to you for. So my journey has really always been through the lens of the incredible opportunities that real estate has presented in my life and the freedom that I gained. And also, side note, you mentioned this, I've been working with people and their money for over 30 years now. But because I was having incredible success with my husband and in building houses, and I knew about the money and how to secure the financing, he knew how to build the home. We were a match made in heaven. But at the same time, at one point in my career, I was a mortgage banker during the lead up to the collapse and after the collapse in 2008. And more than any other time in my life, working with people and money and the stress involved caused me to see just a whole other lens. I eventually became a financial advisor and a certified financial planner. I'm also a real estate broker, but my lens has always been I came from nothing. My parents struggled with money growing up. I decided at an early age, if I could have money, then everything would be fine in my life. All my problems would go away. And yeah, you probably know how that turns out, but it's not quite that simple. But long story short, my relationship with money has dramatically improved going from place of scarcity growing up scarcity even though we became multimillionaires in our mid 30s, and then now 20 plus years later, what does it mean to be in balance and harmony with money is the thing that I feel like I am probably one of a few people on the planet who's seen it through this lens, and as a result love to write and educate people about it. So I have just incredible flexibility to do what I want, spend my time the way that I wish. We do passive investing as well as active investing, and that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. So much to unpack there. So we'll just we'll eat this elephant one bite at a time. How about? So I love your background and backstory. It sounds very similar to my wife and I's. We really got involved in real estate on the active single family side during and shortly after the global financial crisis, right? So we were buying doors at, 90K, putting 30K into improvements and then selling them for 250. And similar to you, where your husband, was a contractor, you had a background in financial side and on the broker side, you almost had an in-place team ready to rock and roll, which was very similar to my wife and I. She just had a knack for interior design. I had some dry powder liquid cash on the sidelines, and my father had a GC license. So it was like kind of this match made in heaven, this team made in heaven. So really appreciate, your story. It's very similar to ours as well. But I'd also like to maybe kind of dive into some of the things that you said. I love your kind of thought about going, transitioning from the scarcity to this abundance mindset. But before we kind of get into that, I know that you say that money is never just about money, right? What deeper truths have you uncovered and do you share with others when people look to transform their relationship with money itself?
Oftentimes in the society that we live in, money is treated like a measuring stick, indicator of your value to society. And unfortunately, it's really hard to get off that hamster wheel, is what I found, because it's kind of everywhere. What car you drive, what kind of house you live in, what's your net worth, all of those things, basing your idea of your own personal success on how much you have or how great you are at getting more. And that's just one lens that I like to point to, because what I found is the way that we operate and the way that we make decisions in our lives has way more to do with the stories that we saw, witnessed, experienced when we were growing up than many of us would like to admit. And, in my case, my parents didn't have money. So then I said, I'll do whatever it takes to have money. And I'm using those words very purposefully. Like, I will do whatever it takes. That was a form of scarcity. Like, it wasn't an idea that anything is possible, that I, just by being born and being alive, that I have incredible resources available to me. Like, it's coming from a place of I've got to compete and I've got to focus on getting more than other people, and I've got to do it at the expense of taking advantage of people. Like, these are the things that we don't talk about enough, and yet they factor into how we feel about ourselves. So when I'm coming from scarcity and I make decisions from scarcity, I'm probably never going to be in happiness, no matter how much money I have. So I like to help people unpack, what are those messages? What are those stories that were happening when you were young that probably have a lot to do with the decisions you're making now that may not actually be helping you? They may be causing you to have more money, but they may not be causing you to have a happier, freer life.
Listen, what you say makes so much sense. I want to really drill down into this kind of idea of financial anxiety, which I think a lot of people have. And, your willingness to kind of explain, where some of your own personal financial trauma started. It made me think about, the times that I, tell my kids over and over and over, like, you guys got to shut the lights off. You got to shut the lights off, right? Because it's costing money. But at the same token, I just spent $8.50 at Starbucks, right? On a latte, that kind of a mental mindset thinking. And the truth is they could leave the lights on for the next 30 days, straight. And it's probably not going to cost, the amount of money that it cost me to buy a latte when I could have just, in fact, had one at home. So it's just interesting. I know a lot of people, a lot of high net worth individuals, a lot of top performers. I'm kind of a recovering, technology sales guy myself. And a lot of these guys were making, multiple six figures, but yet they still have this financial anxiety. So what's maybe the root cause of that anxiety, and why does it even persist amongst high net worth individuals that really shouldn't be living a life of financial anxiety in the first place?
Yeah. I think a lot of it stems from the security fear or the safety fear that again goes back to young experiences. And sometimes it was like, you know, I think you said this, but for me, we got cars repossessed. We lost a house that I loved and had to move into a rented house and had to explain at a young age like why we had to move. And there were a lot of things with mismanagement of money that defined like how I saw myself and how I wanted to others to perceive me because of those experiences. But at its root, what we really need to do is understand how fear is motivating the decisions, and maybe not like you said the decisions, but like the things that we tell our children. Where is it coming from? Fear, if we just take even what you said, like the fear of the money is what you were portraying to the children. But all you have to do is spend a little bit of time thinking about values, and you could say the same exact thing, but you could say, we don't want to waste energy. Like energy is not a limitless source, like it comes from something, whether that be burning fossil fuels or even solar. Like, let's just be conscious of how we turn on the lights and turn them off so that we don't waste energy that's not necessary to be wasted. Like that comes from a totally different place, not about the money, more about like the planet and taking good care of a resource that's important to every one of us. So it's questioning. I had a funny story too. I think my son was 9, he's 20 now. We were at the grocery store and he wanted a candy bar, and I was doing this work and he's like, "Oh, mom, will you buy me this candy bar?" And without missing a beat, I was like, "We can't afford it." And he looked at me and he was like, "You have a brand new car in the parking lot of this grocery store and you're telling me you can't buy this $1, candy bar?" I never did it again. I was so embarrassed. I was like, "That's what my parents would say to me." So I'm just perpetuating these things. And I make light of that because that means very little to people, a candy bar, whatever. But it was a sign of like how I was leading my life in many different ways that, quite frankly, my son, I have to talk to him a lot because he adopted those beliefs regardless of how much I talk about other things. And it's just comical how it's the early messages that stand the test of time, not the stuff that I'm telling him at 20, which just cracks me up and goes to further attest to like, we need to unpack like, what were those messages and how are we perpetuating them? And here's where it means probably more than anything. And this is going to the title of your show, right? This freedom point. Like, I think that our relationship with money keeps us in prison. And if we don't unpack it, we and figure out how to heal these wounds, we will never be in freedom, regardless of how much passive income we're creating.
Yeah, I know that makes total sense. I know a lot of people talk about, leveraging money as a tool, right? So what do you get from a holistic, approach as it relates to people's relationships with money? How would you kind of describe, leveraging using money, as a powerful tool to maybe make a larger impact, in life?
Yeah. So we move away from money first and we focus on like what really is important to you. And why is it important to you? And this has taken me a long time to figure out, even after writing books and talking so much about it. But like in this moment, I've had to realize that what's really, really important to me, Jeremy, is freedom, way more than proving or um, even probably teaching. Like, I value freedom at the top of my self actualization pyramid. And when I'm trying to get something that isn't freedom, that's when I end up getting it backed into corners that I am not happy about. So, what does that mean? Like, I choose the people I work with who have a lot of respect for my high level of personal desire for freedom. So, like, they know that I just got back from Maui, then I was going to Tahoe, then who knows where I'm going. My clients understand that my priority is going to be freedom and that we'll find a way to work together. But if they think that my priority is them more than the freedom, it's probably not going to be a good fit. Values is what I decide around, not the money.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And being able to be in a position, where you're able to, make those types of decisions, and you have a, right relationship, with money, and viewing it as a tool as opposed to, being a landlord over you, kind of a thing.
I'm Zach Captainstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
Would love to maybe know a little bit more about kind of your perspectives, or maybe what you teach, as it relates to, using money as a way to give back and to bless others, or to make a legacy impact, upon, the world or other people's lives, etc.
Yeah. Uh, Back in 2013, I was a financial advisor at the time, but I knew I wasn't very happy with serving in that role because I felt like there was so much more that I could do. And I also felt like financial advising, the way that it's constructed, often takes advantage of people and their lack of understanding of personal finance and investing, for example. Unfortunately, I was at one of these horrifying shootings that happened in the United States, and my doctor, who I was about to see, I was minutes away from him, was shot and killed, and others were shot. And in that moment of trying to get out of the doctor's office while this active shooter was, doing horrible things, I had this out of body experience of like, if I live through this experience, I'm going to look at my life differently and I'm going to make different choices. And that comes to mind in respect to your question because sometimes we need these like moments of intensity to kind of wake us up to what's really important. But ultimately, I decided to walk away from a career of security and financial prosperity without knowing what was going to happen, but knowing that I had insights into a world that very few people did. And I will tell you, and my son makes fun of this. He's like, "Mom, we probably would be a lot richer if you hadn't walked away from your like, good paying job." And I'm like, "Maybe yes, maybe no. But what do you define as richer?" Because in reality, we've probably doubled our net worth in that time frame, even though I haven't made tons and tons of money as an entrepreneur because my priorities changed so much. So my priorities have come into how do I take all this prosperity that I've gained in money, in freedom, and in resources and channel them to help people ask these questions that I've had to ask myself. And I've made that the priority. So writing the Mindful Millionaire book that came out in 2020, writing my new book, The Money Catalyst, which is a fictional parable. What I see is that you know, when we're able to have influence in many, many, thousands or millions of people's lives, like that in and of itself is richness. And I use the platform to be able to touch people's lives in a way that I never could have as a financial advisor. And I guess what I'm saying is that's how I pay it back. I mean, yes, I sponsor children to go to school in Nicaragua. We love seeing these kids that wouldn't be able to go to school if we weren't paying for their education, and we get lovely notes from them, and we keep adding to the number of kids that we make a difference in. Like so many beautiful ways that we can give our cash, but I think that I probably make a much bigger impact with my voice and my books than anywhere else.
Listen, I'm glad that you highlighted that. And, giving back and making a legacy impact isn't all about, writing out a check, right? The truth is that people earn income by trading their time, right? But we can also make an impact on others in the world as well, by giving our time and our talents, not just our finances. So let's talk about, what kind of maybe like the next steps, right? So, let's talk maybe to that person who's kind of feeling stuck, right? They're earning well, they're earning well, but they're not really building wealth. What's often kind of that, missing link, or maybe what's that next, step in terms of what their financial approach should look like going forward?
What comes to me in this moment is that there's a really good chance you are not taking risks in areas because they really, they scare you. And I think every single time we have made substantial returns that have hit our net worth, probably more than, how much we're making on an annual basis, it's been because of our ability to take calculated risks. And I see people over and over again not being willing to take that next step because they're so scared about it. And what's interesting about that too is, I mean, there's so many resources to help you get over the hump of that risk. But when we're trapped in scarcity, we just, we're like frozen with deer, in headlights. Like, we don't realize that we're probably a phone call or two away from being able to feel comfortable with the decision, or at least talk ourselves out of it because it isn't a good decision. But when scarcity, we don't pick up the phone, we don't reach out, we don't find resources, we don't hire coaches, we just stay like still. And so that's the thing that I would say is scarcity. There's a lot of research about it. When we're living in scarcity, it means that we are consumed by what we don't have, or our fear of loss. And what that equates to is about a 13 to 14 point loss in IQ in that moment, which is like losing a full night's sleep. And if you've ever tried to operate and make good decisions without a full night's sleep, like, you're not at your best. But we have to get out of scarcity when we're making big decisions. And I think there's no better resource than talking to other people, listening to podcasts, listening to people that are in the same exact situation that you're in, and then walking through it slowly with the help of some guide.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I had my transformation from scarcity to abundance, in my own life occur about 10 years ago. And honestly, it was all about the podcast. It was all about the earbuds in my ears, consuming podcast content, reading books, putting myself in the room with people that are already abundance mindset thinkers. And once I started exposing myself, that's when I really started to see my own personal mindset, as it relates to my own relationship with money, change considerably. And from a wealth building perspective, it 5x'd, right? So it's just interesting, that how powerful and transformational it really can be to surround yourself with people that can, call you up, right, and change your internal, mindset and way of thinking. So Leisa, what maybe is next for you? I know you recently published a new book, I believe, called Money Catalyst. Would maybe love for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about that book and what the reader might take away, and then of course maybe a couple of different ways that we can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you. The Money Catalyst is a fictional parable. My husband was really involved in writing it because we wanted to explore not just an individual person, their journey through scarcity, but also a couple's journey through scarcity, because we've been working together for so long. We know where the trapdoors are. We know where couples get stuck because we've probably been there and moved through it. So this is like the book I wish I had had at 30 as I was beginning this journey with real estate investing. Granted, it's not about any one type of investing. It's about the mindset of where we get trapped in like not enough, not enough, not enough. And we miss out on the quality of life we can be living. Because I will say this, if had I gone back and done this all over again, I would want to have done two things well. We did the money well. We didn't always do the living well. I think we can do both together at the same time. And the Money Catalyst is intended to help people be watching their money and paying attention to what's happening in that relationship, but then really living according to their values and what's important to them, and doing it in union with their partner. So that's what that is all about. But I also want to say that just this abundant mindset is something that I feel like we're all going to be working on, till we take our last breath. Like, what does it mean? How do we do more of it? I feel like I've come a long way, but I still also feel like a beginner on many days, because life presents us with challenges and difficulties and scarcity moments. The question is how resilient are we in moving past them, so that not only are we past that problem, but we're actually creating greater joy in our lives and greater, happiness in our relationships with other humans, which I think is one of the most important things that we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I so appreciate, that. And you're exactly right. I mean, abundant life living is a daily chore, a daily effort. You have to give it, you have to really invest in it and really continue, on your learning trajectory, because that scarcity for many of us, including myself, has its way of constantly continuing to whisper in my ear, right? And so really appreciate you highlighting that. Well, like I mentioned, is there maybe one or two different ways that we can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, two ways. One is moneycatalyst.book.com. And if you want to check it out, there's the beginning of the book, and there's lots of resources that you can get access to for free, or bonuses that come with the book. You could also go to wealthclinic.com/vision. And there's a meditation to help you look at this whole scarcity to abundance, and the first chapter also of the Mindful Millionaire. So those are great ways to just get acquainted with what I'm teaching and see if it's a good fit for you.
That's great. Well, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes for the episode. Lisa, this has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for the tremendous value that you've brought our listening audience.
Thank you.
Of course. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.